Good morning from Windsor Castle, and thank you for being with us on this, the day of the funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. After more than a week of farewells, today's is the last and ultimate goodbye.
What we will see and hear today has not been experienced in Britain or around the world in 70 years, and it's like will probably never happen again. No British monarch has reigned for so long, lived for so long, travelled as far and met as many people.
But the palace has made clear today is not just about looking backwards. The inclusion of the Queen's great-grandson, Prince George, and his sister, Princess Charlotte, at today's service reinforces the continuity of the monarchy, arguably the late Queen's greatest legacy, her crowning achievement.
By the time this day is over, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor will be laid to rest in the chapel of the castle behind us here in the town that was adopted as her family's name.
Through 4 nights and during 5 days, Her Majesty's coffin has lain in state in Westminster Hall. The last of the hundreds of thousands of people who queued to be in her presence came through there at 6:30 this morning. It is from here that Her Majesty's body will be taken the short processional distance to Westminster Abbey.
In the Abbey itself, the funeral will begin at 11 o'clock in front of royalty, presidents and prime ministers from across the planet. It is where royal heads have been crowned and royal marriage vows taken, not least Her Majesty's own. And today, it is where 9-year-old Prince George and 7-year-old Princess Charlotte will walk in procession behind the coffin of their great-grandmother.
Once today's service is over, the funeral procession will make its way through the ceremonial heart of London, along the Mall, that long, wide avenue, the front drive, if you like, of Buckingham Palace.
But for the first time in 70 years, the gates will not open to receive the sovereign. Goodbyes have already been said inside.
Outside, they are still waiting to be said. Witness the great congregation of people from all 4 corners of the country. They've come, a great united kingdom on Her Majesty's doorstep, and from around the world too.
Here at Windsor, they are also waiting along the Long Walk, another long, straight way, another melding of the ceremonial and the everyday, where a woman in a headscarf, walking her dogs or riding her horse, could produce disbelieving double takes. But there will be no doubting who is passing by later.
And finally this afternoon, below the battlements here at the castle, the coffin will be escorted to St George's Chapel. At 4 o'clock there will be the committal service, which we'll be showing. It ends with the royal coffin being lowered into the royal vault. At 7:30, out of sight of the cameras, comes the private interment service, and Her Majesty's coffin is moved along with that of Prince Philip to lie in eternal rest in the family chapel where her father, mother and sister have gone before.
That all unfolds over the next few hours as we guide you through the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Now, the military preparations are already well underway in central London, and in the next few moments, members of the armed forces will begin to march out ahead of that funeral procession. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, is on that route just by Buckingham Palace. Chris, we've talked a lot, haven't we, over the past 10 days of history being made and the way that the Queen shaped history. What are your own reflections on this final day as we say our final goodbyes?
Well, you know, Tom, there have been so many history-making moments over the last 10 days or so. Some I've seen with my own eyes in Edinburgh or in London, some I've watched on TV screens along with many other people. But I think it is important to remember that tonight, for the King and the royal family, it actually ends in a very private, quiet, intimate and off-camera way when the Queen is laid to rest next to her father and mother and sister and, of course, her beloved husband, because behind where you are, that George VI Memorial Chapel, as it's called, is a very small, intimate corner of St George's, and it will be a very, very quiet family moment. Of course, before all of that, we've got these Eyes of the World events happening here in London, when the Queen's coffin on these famous streets will be carried through like on a tide of, ceremonial splendour, if you like. It will be a very grand exit, but a very solemn exit for this Queen from her capital. And one of those moments, as you've just mentioned, in one of those processions, we will see the young Prince George and Princess Charlotte processing behind their great-grandmother's coffin. Of course, we all knew her as the Queen, but for those two young royals, they just knew her as Gangan.
Yes, Chris, I mean, it is going to be quite a moment, that sight, isn't it? The future of the monarchy really threaded through all the ceremonial today.
Yeah, look, I know there'll be questions inevitably asked about should a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old be doing that kind of thing in front of the world in that, huge Westminster Abbey. My understanding is from sources inside the palace that it was much discussed and they came to a decision with the family. And they also point out that George and Charlotte did attend the remembrance service for the Duke of Edinburgh back in March. But nevertheless, when you think about what you're going to see there, because George and Charlotte will be behind William and Kate, the new Prince and Princess of Wales, we will see in that procession the late Queen, the current King, and then two future kings. And I think if there's any image that's going to explain the future of the monarchy and the destiny for William and for George, it'll be right there and then.
Chris, thank you.
Well, let's come back into the studio here and introduce our guests we're very pleased to have with us this morning to talk about what we are witnessing. Major General Sir William Cubitt is a former Major General commanding the Household Division. Anna Whitelock is an author and a historian specialising in the history of the monarchy. And we're also joined by the royal biographer Hugo Vickers. Bill, perhaps we can just start with you because we're already beginning to see the ceremonial, the soldiers and the sailors beginning to move out. Could you just talk us through what to expect?
Yes, we're going to see 4,500 members of the armed forces taking a very prominent part in the funeral of their sovereign, their commander-in-chief and their greatest supporter. Many in the parade have met Queen Elizabeth, so it will be a very personal ceremonial duty. The first part we will see right now, we can see the troops deploying, but the actual procession will be from the Palace of Westminster lying in state to Westminster Abbey. So a short procession, but very spectacular, with 200 pipers and 140 naval ratings drawing the gun carriage with the coffin.
Anna, just to draw on your historical insight, this is a spectacle of history that we will see unfold today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a culmination of a period of royal mourning we haven't seen before and we're likely never to see again. 70 years, 214 days. This was a record-breaking reign, and still in death as in life, the Queen nudges the monarchy forward. Today, we'll see the funeral of a sovereign televised for the first time. Of course, her coronation all those years ago was televised for the first time. And as we were alluding to with the participation of Prince George and Princess Charlotte, there is a sense of continuity of the future as well as the present and the past, and we're going to see all of those in play today. The gun carriage, of course, that carried Queen Victoria, but also the new hearse designed by the Queen to allow as many people as possible to see the coffin. And I think as we observe today, and the Westminster Abbey, of course, hasn't seen a sovereign's funeral for more than 250 years, deliberately for the Queen's sort of intention that as many people as possible could gather there, and then later, of course, at St George's Chapel. So the Queen had her hand in all of this today. She knew she had to be seen in death to be believed, as she was in life, and to shore up the monarchy for the next generation.